Irish countryside, among misty hills and stone walls where the wind carries haunting melodies, a strange legend lingers. At night when the villages fall silent, a scream tears through the darkness, a sound both heartbreakingly sorrowful and chillingly terrifying. Whoever hears it never forgets. People say it is not the wind, but the mournful wail of the banshee, the harbinger of death. Stories claim that wherever the banshee appears, someone in that household will soon die. Some describe her as an old woman in rags pulling at her hair. Others say she takes the form of a beautiful young woman, her face streaked with tears. However she manifests, one thing remains certain: her cry cannot be mistaken. By the end of this video, you will discover which historical events have been linked to the banshee's appearance and whether there truly was a connection between the scream and the shadow of approaching death. The banshee is a supernatural being from Irish and Celtic mythology, bound to the mystery of death. Her name comes from the Gaelic bean sidhe, meaning woman of the mound or fairy woman. She is not considered an evil spirit, but rather a messenger whose purpose is to foretell death within a family. The banshee is usually described as wearing long flowing garments of white or gray with hair streaming wildly around her while she cries and keens in grief. Over the centuries, she became part of Celtic folklore, and to this day, her presence can be found in Irish literature, songs, films, and stories. People both feared and respected her, because although her appearance was terrifying, she did not bring death herself. She merely announced it. The figure of the banshee is deeply entwined with Ireland's fairy traditions. According to Celtic mythology, she comes from the realm of the fairies and is attached to great noble families. It was said that the ancient Irish clans, such as the O'Brien, O'Connor, O'Grady, or O'Neill families, each had their own banshee who appeared at every death in the lineage, crying out in sorrow. Some traditions claimed the banshee was once a living woman who was murdered tragically by her husband in a garden and thrown into a pond, and whose spirit was forever tied to that family. Other versions describe her as a divine messenger sent by God to soften the blow of grief by warning of the inevitable. For centuries, people in rural Ireland believed, if you hear the banshee's cry echoing through the hills at night, morning will soon follow. The banshee's appearance is described in many ways depending on the legend. Sometimes she is a beautiful young woman, combing her long silver hair with a crystal-clear comb while weeping. Other times she is seen as a wrinkled old crone in ragged clothes, her eyes red from endless tears. In some tales she appears as a ghostly translucent figure, floating like mist. What never changes, however, is her voice. Her cry is a piercing, heart-wrenching scream or a mournful lament impossible to mistake for anything else. People say her wail carries both terror and deep sorrow, as if the very pain of death itself was speaking through her. The banshee's most terrifying power is her ability to predict death. Her cry and lamentation always foretell that someone will soon pass away. She also has the ability to change her form. At times she appears as a young maiden, at others as a grieving mother, and at others still as a bent and aged woman. Her voice is said to be so powerful that it can travel for miles across the countryside, cutting through the night air and reaching directly into the soul of those who hear it. In certain legends, the banshee is believed to stand at the threshold between life and death, able to see what others cannot and even communicate with spirits of the departed. Finally, there is the tale of her magical comb. Folklore warns that if anyone finds a banshee's silver comb and dares to pick it up, terrible misfortune will follow. They say that even the greatest kings could not escape the cry of the banshee. According to legend, on the eve of the Battle of Clontarf in 1014, when Brian Boru, the High King of Ireland, prepared to face the Norse invaders, a haunting sound echoed through the night. It was no war horn, no mortal voice, but the piercing lament of the banshee. Those who heard it whispered in fear, for they knew the omen well. Wherever her cry was heard, death soon followed. Some claimed she was seen upon the ramparts, her long hair tangled by the wind, her eyes filled with tears mourning a fate that had not yet come to pass. Others swore they glimpsed her drifting among the Irish tents, combing her silver hair with a crystal comb, her wails chilling even the bravest warriors. The next day, Brian Boru led his men into battle. Though the Irish claimed victory, the High King himself was slain. And so the prophecy of the banshee was fulfilled. Even Ireland's most legendary ruler could not silence her sorrowful cry. Another story from the 18th century, near Dublin, at Dalkey Castle, the servants reported a chilling event. One night they saw a young woman sitting in the garden dressed in a white gown, combing her long hair with a silver comb while sobbing bitterly. None dared approach, for the sound of her wailing froze them to the bone. The following morning, the lady of the castle was found dead in her bed. She had suffered a sudden heart attack, though she had been perfectly healthy the day before. Word spread quickly, and the locals became convinced. The banshee had appeared to announce her death. Since then, witnesses have claimed to see the weeping figure again near the castle, especially before deaths in the surrounding area. Another chilling case comes from the O'Neill clan in 1649. On a stormy night, the family heard a dreadful wailing echoing from the surrounding hills. It was not brief. The cry went on for hours, like an endless dirge. Trembling with fear, the family lit candles, knowing full well what the sound meant. The next morning, Hugh O'Neill, the clan's leader, was found dead in his bed with no sign of illness or injury. The doctors could find no explanation. The villagers immediately believed the banshee had mourned him before death had even arrived. To this day, people say the O'Neill family's banshee still lingers in that land. Stories like these raise the eternal question: is the banshee truly a messenger of death, or just a myth born of fear and coincidence? Modern scholars often try to explain the banshee phenomenon in psychological or natural terms. Some argue that her cries may have been the sounds of animals, foxes or owls, mistaken by frightened listeners for something supernatural. Others suggest hallucinations born from stress, grief, or exhaustion. But many in Ireland insist it cannot be explained so simply. A figure that has endured for centuries across countless generations must hold deeper roots. Perhaps the banshee is merely the personification of humanity's fear of death. Or perhaps she is something far more real, a messenger from beyond the veil. Throughout Irish history, the banshee's cry has often coincided with great tragedies. During Cromwell's invasion, reports told of soldiers hearing unearthly wailing in the hills before villages were destroyed. In the 19th century famine, families swore they heard her cries before loved ones passed away. But the legend did not remain locked in the past. A taxi driver in 2006 swore that one rainy night on the M50 ring road, just outside Dublin, he picked up a pale young woman in a gray dress. She never spoke, just sat in the back seat, silently combing her long hair with a silver comb. Her reflection was absent from the mirror, but her weeping filled the car so loudly that the driver nearly lost control. When he turned to ask if she was all right, the back seat was empty. Only the comb remained. The next morning, he learned that a multi-car crash had taken place on that very stretch of road at the exact time he saw her, and several people had died. To this day, some Dubliners whisper, the banshee no longer haunts only the hills and villages. She follows us into the modern world, still crying before death arrives. Coincidences like these, both ancient and modern, only deepen the mystery. When countless witnesses across centuries describe the same unearthly cry before death arrives, can we still call it coincidence? Or is it something far more inevitable? Folklorists argue that the banshee legend is, at its heart, a cultural way of coping with the inevitability of death. In a world where life was often short and uncertain, people sought a sign, a warning, so that tragedy would not strike them completely unprepared. The cry of the banshee gave shape to fear, turning the unknown into something that could be anticipated, if not avoided. Natural sounds in the night, the wail of wind through stones, the screech of an owl, the cry of a fox could easily spark the imagination. But when framed as the banshee's lament, those eerie noises became more than just sounds. They became omens. The legend allowed communities to believe that death never came without notice, that sorrow could be foreshadowed by a spectral voice in the darkness. The banshee is therefore more than a simple ghost story. She is a reminder that death, though inevitable, can be faced with dignity when it is expected. Her cry is not only a harbinger of loss, but also a strange form of mercy, granting the living a final moment to prepare, to gather, to say goodbye. Perhaps the true power of the banshee lies not in whether she exists, but in what she represents. Her cry is the voice of inevitability, a reminder that no life is untouched by loss. To hear her wail is to confront the truth we all try to avoid, that death is not a question of if, but when. On misty Irish nights, when the wind whispers across the hills, perhaps it is the banshee's voice that you hear. It may be nothing more than nature's song, or it may be the harbinger of death itself, walking nearby. What would you do if you heard her cry outside your window? Do you believe in her, or dismiss it as mere superstition?
If you're intrigued by the world's most mysterious mythical beasts, don't miss the next episode, where we explore the manticore, a fearsome predator from ancient Persian mythology, with the body of a lion, the face of a man, and a deadly scorpion's tail. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe, turn on notifications, and let's dive deeper together into the world's myths and mysterious creatures. Thank you for watching, and join us for the next episode. And if you hear the cry of the banshee, remember, death may be closer than you think.